Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.
Hello and welcome to Capes on the Couch, where commies get counseling. I'm Anthony Sitko.
And I'm Dr. Issues.
This is issue number 72, Abe Sapien.
He's okay.
This is a hell of a pick.
Nice.
I had to throw that in there. So before we get started, as always, a little bit of housekeeping. First off, we are recording this on the second anniversary of our first ever show. It was March 7th, 2018. Our first episode on Eddie Brock went live.
You mean that we kept at something for over 2 years without just throwing it into the waste bin that is our mind, saying, oh, well, someday we'll get to it? Impressive.
Yeah, we stuck with it. There have been a couple of breaks. You know, I mean, in theory, that we should be on episode 105 or whatever.
Yeah.
But still, the fact that we're on 72 after 2 years, I spent all day tweeting memories and highlights and particular episodes that really stuck out. It's been an amazing ride. It really has. And to think of how far we've come and what we still have yet to do and where we think that the show can still go, we're just getting started, folks. So if you've enjoyed the last 2 years, thank you. From the bottom of my heart, I truly appreciate every single one of you, every single one of our listeners, every single one of our patrons, everybody who's listened, liked, subscribed, retweeted, everybody who's supported us, my wife, my son, my parents, everybody who's given me the freedom and the latitude to do this, every creator we've spoken to, every creator we've interacted with, all of the other podcasts. I have made friends because of the show now. I've been a guest on other podcasts. I feel like I found my people in a manner of speaking. I was looking for something different, apart, something new to belong to, and I have found it through this show. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you. I love you all. I appreciate you all. And I'm incredibly grateful for the last 2 years to have been spending this time with you. And I look forward to the next year, the next 2 years, however long you'll have us, we will continue to do this show.
I'm not sure I have anything to add other than that sounded like an Oscar acceptance speech. Just saying.
Well, nobody came in and played me off, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, because I give you so much latitude. Having said that, I'm going to be very candid here. This show and everything about it has helped maintain my sanity. I know that the work that I'm doing on a daily basis is valuable, but at the same time, getting to put a different spin on it away from the direct impact that I'm having on a day-to-day with patients or my own colleagues is refreshing. And without it, I don't know how long I would be able to do something like psychiatry. I'm just being very real here. I have a certain level of like what I like to call a social tank. And if it weren't for a show like this, that tank would have been drained way quicker. So thank you, Anthony, for giving me the opportunity to have an outlet like this. I greatly appreciate it. It's allowed me to have a different perspective on many different aspects of life and has allowed me to voice things that, in all honesty, if I didn't have this show, I don't know how else I would have voiced them, because there really is no other venue that I have the opportunity to say some of the things I say. So to everyone that listens, to the people that will listen in the future, to the people that leave and come back, whatever the case may be, I greatly appreciate the fact that you're willing to listen to this low-key, raspy, shy guy that happens to have one little kernel of knowledge that sometimes even I admit I don't know perfectly. So I say this with the greatest of humility. I know that part of my reason for being in this world is to make sure that I get to experience it with other people in the way that they will have greater enjoyment. And if I can be a little bit of that joy, then mission accomplished.
Well said. And, there's nobody else I'd rather do this with than you. So now that we got all the mutual bullshit out the way, to borrow a line from Sheriff Buford T. Justice, speaking of people we need to thank, we have a new patron, Frank. Thank you, Frank. You have graciously joined the ranks of our esteemed patrons. I know Frank. Frank actually found us randomly, even though I know who he is. He was the prop guy for the plays that I did.
Oh, okay.
At the theater. And he came across the show happenstance and said immediately, I recognize that voice. I know that guy.
Wow.
And he said, I like what I heard so far. So, Frank, thank you very much. We certainly appreciate your patronage. Send me your address because you got a sticker coming your way. Speaking of swag, this month, our TeePublic store is going to be having a sale March 18th through the 22nd. So if you are at all interested in purchasing some swag with our logo on it, be it a hoodie, a t-shirt, mug, what have you, March 18th through the 22nd, it will be up to 35% off store-wide. So if there was something you've been eyeing, maybe hold off until then and then get it there, because I'm fairly certain by the time that rolls around, we will have a new design in our store. Right now, we've just got the logo, and I know I've been talking about the Because comics for a long time. I am working. Hopefully, by the time this episode airs, I will have contacted an artist, and we will get that in the store, hopefully by the time the sale rolls around. So you can represent Capes on the Couch wherever you are. My wife is, as of when we're recording, my wife is in Atlanta, and she wore a Capes on the Couch t-shirt to the airport and flew down to Atlanta. And now it's loaded with coronavirus.
Oh.
I had to just be a little timely there.
Yeah.
Lastly, last bit of housekeeping, our weekly podcast shout out this week is True Stories of a Tryhard. Ethan is 19 years old. He's got anxiety. I listened to his episode 0 and I thought the sound quality is lacking. He is very much not accustomed to speaking in front of a microphone, and he did it anyway. You could hear in his voice that he was terrified to do this. And he made the show anyway, and he put it out there. And to that end, to go that far with everything he describes, his struggles with anxiety and all of the things that he's going on, and he makes the show and he puts himself out there, that takes balls. Straight up, no question. I heard that and I said, good on you. And he reached out to me. So I recently guested on the show. I'm not just giving him a shout out because I was just on the show, but I think it's a good listen. Every week there's a guest and they talk about their issues with mental health. So I was on, I talked about my struggles with depression. I talked about comparing comic book characters. I sort of, gave an overview of what we do on the show and just talked about, what we do every week, Doc. We use comic book characters to break down those stigmas. And so it's a good listen. So I would encourage all of our fans, if you like this show, there's a good chance you'll like True Stories of a Tryhard. He's on Podbean, and you can basically find it pretty much wherever you find podcasts. Not on Google Podcasts, though, at least not yet. The episode 0 is on there. I told him he's got to talk to his provider so he can get on there. But I believe he's on iTunes and Spotify.
Awesome.
So now that we've got all that out of the way, Abe Sapien. So for many folks who are familiar with the Hellboy franchise through the movies, he's the fish guy who was voiced by David Hyde Pierce in the first movie, but not in the second.
All right.
Doug Jones did fantastic work with the physicality and everything that he brought to the role. And so it's been a lot of fun to read the comics and delve into the roots of Abe and see a slightly different tweak on him than the version that we see in the movies. So Abe Sapien, created by Mike Mignola in Hellboy Seed of Destruction, March 1994. This is the first Hellboy miniseries. This is where we are introduced to Hellboy, Abe, Liz Sherman. So all of these characters are agents and members of the Bureau for Paranormal Research and Defense, and they battle a resurrected Grigory Rasputin, who was responsible for summoning an interdimensional demon to Earth to destroy mankind. It's essentially the first Hellboy movie with Ron Perlman. It's a very closely hewed version of this first storyline.
Yep.
So Abe later was told by Rasputin's spirit that he would be speared to death, which did in fact come to pass. He had an out-of-body experience while bleeding out.
Yep.
And he saw his previous life, because all of this time he had been struggling with who he was prior to being Abe Sapien. We didn't really know as the reader what he was, how he came to be. Abe's origin was kind of a mystery. So we find out as he's dying that he was born Langdon Everett Caul. Caul was a Victorian scientist who performed an occult ceremony, which turned him into an icthyo sapien. The other members of the society performing the ceremony freaked out, as is
Most
totally
people would,
understandable.
yeah.
And so they locked him away in a tank. And it happened to be the exact same day that Abraham Lincoln was assassinated, April 14th, 1865. And so he remained in the tank until he was discovered in November of 1978. And when the BPRD unearthed him, they saw icthyo sapien and date Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. And so Langdon Everett Caul became Abe Sapien.
Now, given his level of intelligence and the fact that he had to be located there for so long, would you call that a think tank?
Get out.
Good luck doing the show.
That's the thing, though. As far as I can tell, he was basically in, I don't want to say suspended animation, but he wasn't really doing much of anything there. And he was practically amnesiac about his prior life, which we'll get to momentarily. So he recovers from the spearing and he begins to investigate his former life. And he ends up having to exorcise the demons of his former wife, Edith, who was attempting to possess his body in order to make him Langdon Caul once again. She wanted her husband back. So unrelated to the Abe situation, Hellboy leaves the BPRD team. And as a result of this, Abe ends up taking a bit more of a leadership role on the team. And during a battle, he suffers some injuries. And although he recovers, he suffers some brain damage. So he sort of goes into a bit of a coma, so to speak. And upon recovering and awakening, he discovered that he had mutated further. He became taller, lankier, and generally stronger. And now he's really trying to grapple with this because he feels he's become more monstrous than he already kind of felt that he was. And he had been adjusted to his appearance. And then to find out that this happens while you're, in essence, sleeping.
Coma
Really does a number on him. So Abe is a fascinating character. Again, I'm not trying to get bogged down too much into the weeds and the details, because it's just a lot of, the stories involve a lot of just, he goes and they fight this monster and he goes and he fights that monster. That's generally how Hellboy stories go.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to belabor the point too much. So let's get into the issues. So the first thing is, and we mentioned this a bit in the background, his initial amnesia, and he gets these almost premonitions, hauntings about his former life. This is before he really discovers who Langdon Caul was / is, so to speak.
Yeah.
But that really can mess with somebody. We've had a couple of characters who have some amnesia about their life. They don't really know who they were before this. I know the Sentry comes to mind. The Sentry was grappling with the whole Bob Reynolds Sentry thing.
We just did the Tick.
I was going to say, we just did the Ticks. We've done the Max, who didn't really know who he was before he became the Max.
Yeah.
And this is sort of a recurring thing. How does Abe handle this?
Right. At this point, I would say someone like Abe had so many current things thrust into his life that it comes in fits and spurts. In other words, it's not something that's constantly on his mind. There's just too many important, urgent things that are happening for him to make it his number one focus. So it almost becomes, I want to say, almost a side hobby. It's not something that's intentionally done, but it happens enough to be disruptive. The best thing I can equate it to would be someone in the dissociative category, where either they've had total fugue states where they don't remember periods of time and sometimes can include travel or just pure dissociation to the point that you aren't aware of what you're doing or it feels like an out-of-body experience. Either way, yeah, you're going to have to process that at some point, because what ends up happening for many people is that they don't consider it them. It's as if it's a completely different person. And yet, for anyone that's experienced it, Abe is unique because it's century old, but most people will say like, well, I was there when you were that way and this is what happened. So no, it was you, and whatever consequences happened because of what you were doing at that time or how you were acting or what emotions you had, what you said and did still count. And that can be difficult because in general, especially someone like Abe who enjoys responsibility, I'll say, he wants to own it. It's just really hard when you don't actually remember it. So that dichotomy is very strange, because now you have a whole section of yourself that you're trying to attribute certain traits to or trying to attribute certain values to, and you can't do it because you don't have your own personal agency. It's bizarre. It almost would be better if someone said, well, this being took you over and this is all what's responsible, which is also a comic trope, but he doesn't have that to fall back on. He could say that it, quote unquote, wasn't me, or I don't even know how I could deal with this. And many people do say that. They will say, like, I'm going to go there. If someone is blackout drunk, I see this in the ER constantly. It truly is a blackout. The person doesn't remember. So they don't remember the damage they caused. They don't remember getting into the fight. They don't remember making the suicidal comments, all of it. And yet, we have it on paper from the people that were there. We have it from the police report. And then we have whatever happened in the ER, including the restraints, the fight with security, the threats to me, all of it. And the person is just sitting there sometimes saying, oh, I would never do something like that. Like, I don't care what your philosophy is. This is the reality. So now it's incredibly fascinating to see, because I'll admit it hasn't happened to me, so I can't relate to it. The idea that there is so much of yourself that has been experienced in this world by other people and you didn't experience it yourself, or at least you didn't do it aware, with full awareness. I'll admit it's just one of those fascinating things to see. And some people just have complete denial and continue with the denial, and they'll just say that, well, they were just lying, it never happened. Or in the case of someone like Abe, they're willing to acknowledge it must have happened, but it can't be that important if it's not something that's still resonating with me right now. In his case, because of the gap, with the exception of his wife, of course, it doesn't affect other people nearly as much. But in our world, you could have completely altered the relationships that you've had, and you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. So there could be a lot to unpack there.
Interesting. I hadn't really considered that. As someone who has rarely lost consciousness and interacted with the world, I will say the one time I did it, apparently I was told I was fighting with the EMTs.
All right. Yeah, I know what you're talking about too. All right.
But that was when I
but that was for a different reason. Let's just make this clear, because I don't want rumors to start. Anthony was not intoxicated in any way, shape, or form.
No. I was running a half marathon and went unconscious due to dehydration. And apparently I fought the EMTs because I wanted to finish the race, because it was at mile 12.5 of a 13.1 mile race. Just let me finish the race. I never got my medal. Still bummed about that. But anyway, the next thing that I want to talk about is this notion that he's insecure about being compared to Hellboy. There were at least 2 stories that I read where he was very much grappling with the idea that, if Hellboy were here, this is what he would do, but I'm not him. I don't have his big right hand. I don't have his strength. I don't have this, that, and the other. And there's always this, especially once Hellboy leaves.
Mm-hmm.
Now he becomes a more senior agent within the BPRD. And he feels like he has to step into that role, but he does not have the physical presence of Hellboy. He does not have Hellboy's mentality. He's not Hellboy in any way, shape, or form. It's very much a red Oni, blue Oni offset of each other.
Yeah.
And now he was the blue Oni, literally, and now he wants to be the red Oni, which he can't.
Right.
That's just not who he is.
Yep.
But damn if he doesn't beat himself up over wanting to try it. That is unsettling.
Well, that is the trap that many of us fall in, myself included. When you see a certain behavior, especially with people that are in a position of leadership or authority, it's just a matter of mirroring. I'm not even talking true mentorship. I'm simply talking direct observation, monkey see, monkey do. That's what you learn. That's what you know. And therefore, that becomes the ideal. And once that's set as the ideal, any deviation from the ideal is going to create anxiety and potential depression because you're failing to meet the ideal. So it's very simple. Hellboy is a powerful entity that destroys things and wants to do the right thing all the time. And
most of the time.
Well, you get my point. I know there's a lot more to it than that, okay? And there is another parallel between the two, because in different stories, even with Hellboy's origin, the whole point is eventually he is supposed to take everything over when it comes to hell. With Abe, there was a storyline, I remember, basically he was destined to lead this group of frog people or something like that. I apologize. I may be messing it up, but basically the same premise. The main difference is Hellboy at times has a very laissez-faire attitude about all of it, saying like, look, I'm just trying to do the best I can with what I got. So if that happens, so be it. If it doesn't, and in the comics, you can read them, how that starts to turn out. With Abe, though, he really doesn't respond well to those things. He really doesn't. He wants to analyze everything to a certain degree before acting. And more importantly, as you already said, his thing is, well, how would Hellboy handle this? Like, in all honesty, who cares? It doesn't matter how one person handles it. It's how you handle it. So his thing is, that's the model he saw. And even for a man as intelligent and as resourceful as he is, the fact that that was the ideal and that's what was set, he's very rigid in that form of thinking, as many of us get. And often it's because we have the type of external constraints that kind of force us to think that way. With Abe, it's true because the agency relies on him and relies on all of the agents to get things done. We have jobs. If we don't do our job well enough, we're going to get fired. So if you see a leader that did something a certain way and they remained in leadership until, let's say, they left, not that they were forced out, they just left of their own volition or retired or whatever, and they say, okay, you're the next person up. Congratulations. Your first thought is, okay, what did the other person do? I'll do it the same way or just as good. Or if you have the mindset, I want to do better, but you're still going to usually follow that same construct because your idea is, as long as I stay in this lane, I'll be okay. So even if you have your own thoughts or ideas that are, I hate this term, but outside the box, you're going to be less likely to deviate because that's going to bring scrutiny. And for someone like Abe, who really already knows what scrutiny is like just from the way he looks and everything else surrounding his past, doesn't want more scrutiny. Not like that. So the more he could be like Hellboy, who we also have the feedback that people liked working with him. Not always. Clearly some conflicts. But in general, people thought that he was well-meaning and very productive. I'm really cleaning it up here. Obviously, in the comics, it's more entertaining. But as long as you follow that, you're not going to get hurt, quote unquote. That's the idea. That's what we do in our lives. If we follow the path of what other people have done before us, it's hard to create more problems, or so we think. That's the fallacy that we create in our minds.
Yeah, there definitely is that notion of, oh, okay, I have to do it this way, or I have to follow this model to some extent. And I can tell you from just my personal experience at work, my predecessor had a very involved filing system as part of my job. I cover 5 counties. And so each county had a separate color folder. And so I stepped in and I said, well, I'm just going to continue this because the system worked. I was stepping into a number of projects that were already in existence. So it certainly didn't behoove me to go ahead and switch horses midstream for most of these projects. So I said, well, I'm just going to stick with this. Now, do I do things a little bit differently than my predecessor? Absolutely. I'm more digital. I tend to hew towards more paperless, focus on a lot more email-based things rather than phone calls and taking hand notes. But as you said, the basic construct is still there. And I think it's just because for me coming in, I was so overwhelmed with everything else that I had to do that I thought, here's an area where I'm not really going to try and put my own separate stamp on everything because my predecessor was in the role for 20 something years. And so who am I to say that I'm just going to come up with this brand new system solely so I can say it's mine? And I think we as people sometimes like to institute change just so we can put our stamp on it.
Yeah, change for the sake of change. Yeah.
Change for the sake of change, I think, is ridiculous. I think change to evolve, to grow beyond what was already there. If it's organic like that, I'm totally for it. But switching things up just to say, yeah, that's how it was done, but that's not how I'm going to do it, even if how it was being done worked, I think is asinine and frankly very immature.
Yeah.
And it's very egotistical. To say that this is how I'm going to do it, even though, and I'll be the first to say that this is how it's always been done is not a valid excuse for anything. But if it's working.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Exactly.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
So for the third issue, I want to call back to something that you had referenced earlier. Abe is uncertain about who and to some extent what he is. He wakes up in the tank. He's this frog person. He eventually goes back. It's almost like a time loop that he's in when he's having this out-of-body experience, that he steps into his body, that Abe steps into Langdon Caul's body at the moment of the transition from a spiritual sense. So he becomes what is like a predestination paradox almost, so to speak.
Yeah.
A stable time loop. I don't want to get into time travel or whatever time loops, but he has this mutation and then he further mutates. And because of, as you said, the frog monsters that he had been grappling with, and I think that's in The Drowning, I think is the story arc, he's very concerned about the impact that they have. And am I going to become one of them? Especially because he is told by the old woman, I believe, that you will become the leader. We want you to join us, help us take over. Da, 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 da. So he's like, very similar to Hellboy. Am I destined to become an evil thing or do I have my own agency? And so all of this uncertainty that he is struggling with really tears him internally. And that is, I think, quite possibly one of the biggest struggles that he has. And it's something that, at least from a physical appearance standpoint, that he does come to terms with. But from that emotional and historical standpoint, he still struggles on occasion.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Especially when you consider the idea that he is so unique in his situation, in his appearance. Yes, the frog monsters that they're battling are similar enough, but because of the way they're portrayed, he knows that they are a threat. And therefore, they get cast immediately in a negative light. And therefore, he knows that he doesn't want to be portrayed in a negative light, not just by others, but for himself, which is true for all of us. In general, we do not want to see ourselves as bad people. Because once we start to see ourselves as bad people, that's when emotions really start to fall apart and we develop severe neuroses, depression, what have you. And even develop psychosis just to compensate for the fact that we aren't able to reconcile the two. So then in Abe's case, the way he likes to handle things is he wants to know more. He always wants more information. He always wants to make sure that everything is set the right way so that he can do the right thing. And naturally, what are the actual situations that he's in? They're very nebulous. They're fluid in terms of, and no pun intended, they are incredibly dynamic in what's going on. And things that he thought he knew end up changing. So he can't just rely on the idea of, well, if I just have a little bit more information, it becomes paralysis by analysis. Unfortunately, because it's all internal, it's not anything to do with what anybody else is saying. He doesn't even have the opportunity to have someone show him what's wrong. He has to really struggle with this individually by himself. Anybody else, we're in that type of circumstance, we can have someone say, like, well, you know, that's just imposter syndrome, right? You'll be just fine, or whatever. In this case, who knows about frog people? I don't know about frog people. Anybody that he's working with doesn't really know about frog people. The frog people themselves don't seem like they're the most honest people in giving information, so he doesn't have any sounding boards with it. So he basically has to trust himself that what he's doing is really the right thing and won't lead to this other quote-unquote predetermined path. But then what happens? He also gets things that do happen the way people predicted them. So he gets speared after he was told that he was going to be speared. So he has evidence to say that other people can actually have that type of influence and know what's going on. That really messes with somebody, especially if they're of the deep thinking type, because now you're taking direct evidence and saying, well, that was a one-time thing, but it was such a significant one-time thing. He was pretty much on death's door. How do you discredit that when someone else in a very similar fashion gives you that type of future information? Most people would say that if you have previous behavior, and I know I've said this numerous times, the greatest predictor of future behavior is previous behavior. So if that's happened before with someone who was considered a threat, telling him that information, and someone else says it again, and you're in a circumstance where you could definitely see yourself being in that situation where that could come true, does that become a self-fulfilling prophecy? And when you do that enough times without the feedback of someone else to keep you grounded, then you end up in a pretty dark place. If you do not have a buffer with these kinds of thoughts, then forget whether or not you know what you are. You're automatically going to be worse off than if you had sought someone out. Yes, in a way, that's a plug for a therapist, but I'm just saying.
Wow. I never considered that aspect of it, the whole self-fulfilling prophecy situation, but especially given what Abe and the BPRD have to deal with, it is very plausible that they would end up in those types of situations.
Yeah. And you know this better than I do. So if you remember the name, I'll admit I don't remember who said it. Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
I know exactly. I know the quote, but I don't recall off the top of my head who said it. But yes.
Okay, that's homework for our patrons then, okay?
Tell us who posted that quote. So, all right. Well, we got a lot of great stuff, and I'll be very curious to see where we go with treatment. But we're going to take a break for a second and plug a couple of shows. When we come back, we'll get into the in-universe treatment. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Greetings and salutations. This is Cage's Kiss, the ultimate Cage cast, where we discuss the movies and life of the national treasure, Nick Cage.
There are three of us here, and I can't help but notice that none of us are Nicolas Cage. Did nobody call him?
What? A Cage cast with no Nick Cage?
No, instead of being Nicolas Cage, we're three Nicolas Cage experts, which is the next best thing.
I don't think we should admit to being experts.
Too late.
We are not experts at anything. We are not life coaches, and we are not in any way, shape, or form qualified to give you suggestions on life choices.
But Nick Cage is, and he's made hundreds of life choices.
Seriously, I cannot stress enough just how much you should not take our advice.
But we're experts.
No, seriously, we're not experts.
Yes, but we will be reviewing his first acting gig as Nicholas Coppola, Best of Times, which features a young and very precious Crispin Glover.
And his work in Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
And his work in My Nightmares.
We're experts!
Everybody has a story, and not all of those stories are clear black and white issues, even when we think they are. We wonder, how did this happen? Or what is that like? Or what happens next? Are you sure you really want to know? This is Ignorance Was Bliss at IWB Podcast.
Hi, I'm Erica Schultz, and this is Capes on the Couch, where comics get counseling.
And we're back. So in-universe treatment, and Doc has indicated that he is very clear on exactly what it is that he wants to do. So I'm going to let you handle this. Go ahead and tell us how you would help Abe Sapien.
Well, I'm going to include you interacting with me in this.
Okay.
And it's going to be similar to one we've done before. Where was Abe Sapien found?
In a tank?
What did I call that tank earlier as a joke?
A think tank?
So why don't we make it that? Abe gets into a tank. It doesn't have to be that specific tank. What I'm saying is, I think he needs to have some time with some feedback. It's going to be a combination of biofeedback. It's going to be some, I hate calling it subliminal messaging because that's not really the intent. I'm saying you can have mantras, you can have certain phrases, you can have things that are considered a positive meditative experience and have it in an environment that clearly he's comfortable in water. Almost like a sensory deprivation chamber.
I was literally just about to say, so you want to put him in a sensory deprivation tank.
Right. Except I don't want him to be completely asleep. I don't want him to be in that phase. I want him to be awake. I want him to be able to control that state. Because a lot of what we're seeing with Abe has to do with this lack of control or his perceived lack of control. So therefore, if you take away many of the other stimuli, but then say you are in charge right now, what are the things that you need to hear? What are the things that need to be said to you by an outside voice? Or if he wants to record his own voice, that's fine. But make it things that are actionable, make it things that are concrete, that are going to allow him, whether it's totally accurate or not, allow him to have a construct that will help solidify his sense of personality. That's the goal. I don't care if it's exactly the way it really was in history. I don't care whether or not it's based on someone's prophecy. I don't care about any of that. Abe, what do you want? Go ahead, write it down. Either have someone you trust record it or record it for yourself. Get in the tank. If you need to close your eyes, fine. You want to keep them open and have something to visualize? Great. Either way, let it go. Do it for an hour, 2 hours, whatever you want. Do it on a consistent basis and yield the results.
I think I kind of want to do that just myself. That sounds interesting. I've always kind of wanted to be in a sensory deprivation tank. It seems, like the sort of thing that could be terrifying and liberating all at once. And those types of situations interest me. If you feel like you can learn a lot about yourself and also shit your pants at the same time. I think that's kind of part of the reason why I do Tough Mudders, because it's always interesting to see how far you can go because you learn a lot about yourself in those types of situations. So one of these days I'll do sensory deprivation. We'll see how it goes. I'll report back. If we're still doing the show when I do this, I will definitely report back. Awesome. So out of universe, I don't know what the corollary would be for Abe. You being the expert would.
Okay, so I'm going to take a turn that I don't think we've ever done before. I'm not going to focus on a particular person or whatever in terms of treatment. What I'm going to do is something that's a little more practical. And what I'm about to say is not considered official recommendation for a specific type of treatment, but it's something that I think could be beneficial to people and consider this general education as opposed to direct advice. So I'm not specifically talking about sensory deprivation chambers or anything like that, but there is a way to get yourself into a state that allows for your mind to have a bit of a reset. And I apologize if this sounds a little too woo-woo, but that's not the point. It really is practical. Your body cannot be tense and relaxed at the same time. Sounds like common sense, right? But the point is, you can control whether or not your body is tensed or relaxed. You just don't think about it consciously usually. You just know what it is in the moment, and it's usually the opposite way. In other words, your emotions are driving whether or not your body is tensed or relaxed. But if you flip it, almost in a biofeedback format, but biofeedback has to do with actual autonomics, which I can't even get into right now. You can make a fist. And no, don't punch anything, okay? Please. But you can make a fist, and you can make it as tight as you can without hurting yourself. And you can hold that for 10 seconds. After those 10 seconds, you take a deep breath, you release. You have now just established that your body was originally as tense safely as it could be, and is now automatically in a more relaxed state. I started with your fist because that's an extremity. That's the furthest point away from your core. You can focus on every voluntary muscle that you have. And you can do this for each one of them, like I said, for 10 seconds. And then afterwards, when you release it, it will be more relaxed than it was before. And if you're managing to do this throughout your entire body, you are automatically putting your body in a more relaxed state than when you started. Therefore, it allows for your emotional state to be calmer than it was before, whatever it is. This is true for whether or not you're euphoric. This is true for whether or not you're distressed, anxious, scared, angry, whatever the case may be. Now, am I saying that this is a cure for those conditions when they are in the moment? Of course not. This is not a substitute for any other specific treatment. But it is something that if you are a stick of dynamite and your fuse is short, it pours a little water on the fuse. It lengthens it a little bit before you explode. Just a recommendation that I think would be helpful to people if they've never considered it before. And you can do it at any time. There's no prescription required. There's no extra assistance needed. Thank you and have a nice day.
Well, that is incredibly sound advice. And I can say that because that is something that I do in my personal life. No, seriously. One of the big things that Tony Robbins pushes, and I know Tony Robbins is a controversial figure to some, but some of what he preaches is rooted in real world mechanics and biomechanics and so on and so forth. And he said it is almost impossible to feel angry when you're smiling. So he goes, even if you force yourself to smile, that will help lighten your mood. The other thing is forcing everyone in the seminars to stand up perfectly straight and head back. And he goes, imagine someone is pulling a string from the top of your head all the way through your spine. Stand up as straight as you possibly can. And now try and feel bad about yourself. You can't. Or it's very, very difficult to do that. Whereas, if you're slouching, if you're like, your body is in that mindset, your body is in a position to drive your mind to feel a certain way. But if you are standing ramrod straight, chest out, shoulders back, head up, you will instinctively feel better about yourself. And the body will drive the attitude. And so a lot of it goes back to what you were saying, that we allow our mind to dictate how we feel and how we physically interact with the world around us.
Yep.
But it is possible to flip it and to let the body drive the attitude. It's something you have to be conscious of, but I find it myself at work. If I'm sitting at my desk for an extended period of time and I just, all right, let me, I crack my neck a little bit. I stand up, I stretch, I get up, I move.
Yeah.
And just that simple act puts my brain in a better mindset almost instantaneously.
One of the best psychiatric lessons I learned was not from a psychiatrist. It was from one of my physiology professors in medical school. He said, we consider psychosomatic issues so much that we start to inherently understand the idea that the mind controls the brain, controls the body. That's fine. He said, what about the somatopsychic? What about the reverse correlation that the body has a huge impact on the brain, which therefore impacts the mind? If you don't consider that other side and flip the equation, then you're missing a huge opportunity. So
absolutely right.
That's something that I hadn't talked about before. I will do my best as this show evolves to try and come up with some of those basic things that sometimes we get so into the weeds of a lot of the heady stuff that we forget just the real simple things that can make someone's life better. So I'll try and throw those in once in a while. I can't guarantee I'm going to do it every show, but yeah, that was one that really came to mind with Abe because Abe comes across as tight. I mean, really tight. So if he could find a way to just loosen up just a little bit, it would help him out so much.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So we're going to take all of this and head not underwater, but we'll take a deep dive into Abe Sapien when we get him on Dr. Issues' couch.
Hello, Abe. I'm Dr. Issues.
Hello, Doctor. I'm very pleased to meet you.
Are you comfortable?
This chair isn't quite suited to my frame, but I've certainly endured worse. Thank you for asking.
Do you need water?
I made sure to drink plenty before I came in. As long as you don't run a dehumidifier, I'll be fine.
Okay, just checking. So what brings you in today?
I need to get some things off of my chest.
Like what?
Lately, I find myself doubting my own abilities. Doubt leads to hesitation, and hesitation in the field leads to danger and possible death. So I'd like to eliminate that possibility.
I completely understand your reasoning. I should point out that no matter how effective therapy works, I can't just eliminate doubt from your mind. That's part of the human condition.
I appreciate your candor, Doctor. Even the part where you hesitated about calling me human.
I'm sorry.
It's fine. I'm accustomed to it for the most part.
For the most part. Oh, okay. Let's just put a pin in that and we'll come back to it later. What's making you doubt your abilities?
Well, ever since Red left,
Red?
Hellboy. Sorry. That's just what I call him.
Gotcha. Please continue.
Since he left, I feel like I've been called upon to handle some of the, shall we say, heavier cases. Except I don't have his skill set. And I definitely don't have his strength. So I'm at a bit of a loss as to how to proceed. I know I'm not him, but I feel like so many of these situations are suited for him, not me. And instead of thinking about how I would handle it, I find myself wondering, what would Hellboy do?
I see. Let me ask you this. Why do you think his way is best? Something inside you believes there's only one way to solve a problem and that his way's the only way.
It's just, Red got things done. They may have been messy, and they may have gone sideways plenty of times, but at the end of the day, he got results. It's hard to argue with his methods.
Ever heard the expression, more than one way to skin a cat? Hellboy may have accomplished certain goals, but there's no rule saying you can't do things your way. I'm sure you can handle yourself in a fight if it came to it. But there's trickery, there's diplomacy, there's avoidance.
Apologies, Doctor, but first off, don't ever use that expression skinning a cat around Red. He's very attached to animals. Furthermore, the scenarios I find myself in rarely allow for any sort of discussion, and it's hard to fool an undead corpse or an ancient demon.
Point taken, but that still doesn't mean that you're less of an agent than Hellboy.
I concur about less than him, but...
Well, okay, well, I was going to say, being different allows for more possibilities. But that gets back to my error earlier, doesn't it?
I'm afraid I don't follow.
Well, I hesitated in calling you human. That was a huge mistake on my part. You were gracious about it, but I think it's more germane to the conversation. Why didn't you challenge me more?
I'm in the habit of focusing on bigger problems. A minor faux pas is no need to get angry.
That's fine, but how many times do you have to acquiesce to someone else's view of you?
As you've stated, it's automatic. Any time I spend thinking about myself is less time I spend thinking about my mission.
I wish it were that simple. You're subtly spending emotional energy throughout the day shielding yourself to the point that you're trying to use Hellboy's rubric as your main strategy. I think you're mixed up.
That may be taking it too far. I'm certainly sophisticated enough to compartmentalize whatever it is I need to compartmentalize.
For someone that's so well spoken, you don't seem to have the vocabulary for this. Did Hellboy?
He didn't care enough to do such a thing. Fight until there's nothing left, then fight harder. I can see the spirit in that.
Well, what did he see in you?
I'm sure he saw an intellectual, a compatriot, a friend, a confidant.
A fellow outcast.
No, not really. Not with our agency. We were all misfits. No need to go into that.
Well, did he lash out?
On more than one occasion.
Did you join in?
I was the voice of reason.
So we're back to what I asked before. You have different skill sets. You have one common theme to bond you. What gives you doubt? You just rejected my hypothesis.
Maybe not. Perhaps this perturbs me more than I thought. Doctor, have you ever scared someone?
Sure, I enjoy surprising people when I'm quiet. You know.
That's not at all what I meant.
Not... Oh. Then no, I haven't.
He could shrug it off better than I could. He reacted, and we saw it hurt him sometimes, but then he let it go.
I take it that means you're the opposite?
Civil, respectful, and deeply hurt to the core. Not exactly something you can change with a facelift.
You're wonderful, Abe.
I beg your pardon?
Look, you don't get to hear this from an outsider often, so I'm just going to give it a try. It's true, you look like a monster, but you elicit awe without trying. You get the spotlight in an instant. Do me a favor, don't shy from it. Don't let them patronize you. Be the elegant man that you're destined to be.
You make me sound like a hideous James Bond.
Well, you make Hellboy sound like a demon Chuck Norris. Stop it. You know, both of you have the same emotional base to use in society. He went his way because it suited him. You'll fail if you do that. Stop setting up a straw man.
I wasn't. I'm not. I realize there's quite a bit of truth to your words.
Give me your mood right now.
Presently, I am vacillating between enraged and resigned. Unsure if there's a word for that specific emotion.
Okay, how about you're pissed off, Abe?
No, I would equate that with enraged. This isn't quite that. I acknowledge if and when I reach that state, but I'm not there. It's an odd combination of anger, hurt, and realization that I was not as aware of my feelings as I thought I was.
Wow, thank you for the excellent clarification. I realized I was being too simple-minded. It doesn't have to be one word. I'm just grateful that you're putting words to it now.
And words will be just the beginning. I hope to put actions to them shortly, once I wrap my head around this a bit more. But that will take time, certainly.
Well, I'll gladly be by your side. We can walk this swim this path together.
I appreciate that, Doctor. I do look forward to continuing this growth with you. That went really, really well. I think he experienced some actual growth and not just of the physical type.
Yeah, I would say it went swimmingly.
And there it is. There it is.
You set that up so perfectly. I did not have that pre-planned.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Sure.
Hey.
I know you do love your puns.
Yep.
So that's going to wrap it up. So the recommended reading, which we didn't really do for the tick, but we'll get back to it here. The recommended reading for Abe Sapien, there's two storylines. The first one is BPRD Plague of Frogs, and that is an Abe-centric story that really delves into his background. And this is where we learn about how he went from Langdon Caul to Abe Sapien. And then the other one is Abe Sapien, The Drowning, which also really kind of relates into his origins and ties into the what is Abe? Is he related to the frog monsters? Sort of touches on a lot of his internal struggles. So those two storylines, I would encourage folks to go out and read. You can find them in trade paperback form. If you go onto Comixology, they're available. If you have Unlimited, they are included in that Unlimited package. And so I would encourage all of our listeners, if you want to find out more about Abe Sapien and the Hellboy universe, I think those are good jumping off points to get a better understanding of Abe personally.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that does it. Next episodes, we've got Yorick Brown from Why the Last Man, and that's a Matt request. And then Alfred Pennyworth, as requested by Ariel, who loves her Bat family. And then our 75th episode rather. And this one, we're doing something special, and this is the first time we are announcing it. We are doing Capes in Court.
Yay!
And this is going to be a different episode than we've done before. It's going to be, the roles will be flipped, that Doc is going to be asking the questions, and I will be providing the answers on legal matters. And so the topic is, how do you do estate planning in a universe in which death is not permanent?
Wow.
So think along the lines of Marvel or DC, in which characters come back from the dead on the regular. How do you plan for that? How do you estate? What happens to Jean Grey's stuff when she dies and then comes back? What happens to Logan's when he dies and comes back? What happens to Ra's al Ghul in the interim? What happens to his stuff in the interim between when he dies and he inevitably ends up in a Lazarus pit? So,
God, the Bat family in terms of inheritance.
Exactly.
Whoa.
What happens to all of their stuff if they die and then they come back?
Oh, dear.
So we'll be discussing some real life legal implements that are used. We can have death in absentia. So there's a whole host of things that are real life legal tools that are used, and how they can be translated or transferred to a comic book universe. So I'm doing a lot of research and reading now to prepare myself. So that is coming up. I know we've referenced the idea of Capes in Court for a while, and I felt that the 75th episode would be a good opportunity for us to break that in. So
fantastic.
So it's going to be a little different. Doc, you're going to be the one asking me the questions.
I'm so happy.
So that's going to wrap it up. As always, you can find us basically wherever you find podcasts. And if you listen to us on a platform that allows you to like, rate, and review, please do so. If you leave us a nice 5-star rating, we certainly appreciate that. And if you give us a 5-star rating and you send us a screen cap of that along with your address, we will send you a sticker as a way of saying thank you for your support. And so that can be on Apple Podcasts, that can be on Podchaser, that can be on Stitcher. Send it to us, and that is our way of saying thank you. And so as we mentioned at the top of the show, our TeePublic site, tpublic.com/user/Capes on the Couch will be having a sale between March 18th and 22nd. So if you're interested in getting some Capes on the Couch swag, that would be the time to do it. You can make like Frank, who's a brand new patron, and you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/Capes on the Couch and subscribe at the $1, $3, or $5 levels and continue to financially support the show. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook at Capes on the Couch, where we will continue to be for the next 2 years, at least, hopefully, God willing. We've been here for 2 years already. As I mentioned at the top of the show, we're recording this on our 2-year anniversary, and we hope to continue to be here for 2 more years. And as always, our website is capesonthecouch.live, and also now capesonthecouch.com. Which I finally, when we re-upped the website, I said, you know what, let's just go ahead and buy it. The primary thing is all still out of capesonthecouch.live, but I'm like 99% certain if you go to capesonthecouch.com, it now just redirects you to our website. So
Yay!
That hopefully helps folks who may have been a little confused by the .live suffix on or the domain name on our website. So, Doc, anything you want to say? You already had the swimmingly pun. You got another one lined up?
Well, don't be a fish out of water. Make sure that you have a fluid mindset. And if you go to therapy, together we can turn the tide.
Puns and Hamilton. Good for you. So that's going to do it for Doc Issues. I'm Anthony Sitko. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next week.
Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.